can we adopt it so that we're able to proceed with our meeting for today? Honorable Niehaus, Honorable Klute, you'll follow.
Thank you, Chair. I propose adoption of the agenda. Chair, I don't know if this is the exact right point in the meeting to do so, but from the side of the EFF, well, from the side of me as a member of this committee, there's a request that in due course we please find a place in one of our future meetings to put on the agenda the issue of the continuing concerns about the G4S employees in Mangaung. So if we can find that space in the future in a meeting, we will really appreciate it. Thank you. But beyond that, I propose adoption for this agenda. Thank you.
Honorable Klute.
Dank u voorzitter, ek sekondeer.
Thank you so much. The agenda is duly adopted and serves as a guide for today's meeting. With regards to the G4S matter, as soon as we get the legal opinion from Parliament, we will schedule a meeting. Until such time, there will not be any meeting, because we must never find ourselves speaking on matters that were not legally guided by Parliament on how we should proceed or align ourselves as the portfolio committee. So both judgment before the appeal and after the one have been sent to the legal team, and we're waiting for that response. I think Matabata and Sia, once they've gotten that from the legal team, then we'll be able to proceed so that we then can have a recommendation on how we're going to move as the portfolio committee. And equally, when we bring the department before us to talk to the matters, we have the legal background that gives us that jurisdiction in terms of our oversight role on the matter. We'll then move to apologies. Mr. Mtonjeni.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning to the delegation from the department. We've got quite a few, Chair. Honorable Hendricks is not available due to political commitment. And Honorable Noluchung is also not available today due to political commitments. Honorable Sokopo, Chair, will join us a bit later, around about past 10. He's on his way. He has just been delayed. We also received an apology from the Deputy Minister, Chair. Due to political commitments, she could not be with us today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Those are the apologies. We have the apology also of Ms. James, who would leave around past 11 to 12. We equally have an apology from the minister, whom would leave around 1 if we have not concluded, because he must join the questions of the NCOP session. So those are the additions to the apologies, and they would be taken as noted. We'll then move to item 3 on the agenda, which would be the first quarter report of the department. And we have received the report in advance. Members have gone through it, and I think they are just ready now for questions and clarities. We will get the presentation from the department to take us through. And Minister and the National Commissioner, I think the Minister was part of the JICS meeting throughout. Do appreciate that you were able to stay throughout, so that where there were matters of concern that as the portfolio committee we had taken, that they would be advanced in this meeting. We would be appreciative that the department, when it presents, it's able equally to come on board on those matters. Because the minister was online throughout until we concluded. CDC Gadenga also was online until we concluded, and with Mr. Sigalala as well, was online until we concluded. So they are aware of those issues, and would appreciate that you come on board on them without waiting for members to seek clarity, because you would have been able to, you have an appreciation, and I'm sure you have responses on those matters. I will therefore hand over to the Minister for the department first quarter report. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, honorable members. I think I've greeted all of you. Chairperson, I'm going to save some time because the presentation deals with all the matters. Suffice to say that, yes, we obtained 83% of our targets. That projects into 29 of the targets, and 6 are not achieved, where we have 3 not achieved in the administration, 2 in incarceration, and 1 in rehabilitation. When it comes to care, social reintegration, we have met all the targets. So, having said that, Honorable Chair, I think if we can continue through you for the submission and the presentation, then we can continue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, National Commissioner.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members. Thank you, Minister. The presentation in order of arrangement will be done by CDC Strategic Management, Mr. Katenga, and the CFO, Mr. Marumula. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Good morning, Chairperson and honorable members, Minister and National Commissioner. I will take the committee through just the highlights of the performance and focus mainly on the areas of underperformance or non-achievement and what the department is going to do to improve over the remaining 3 quarters of the financial year. Minister has already spoken to this slide. If we can move to slide 5, just in terms of the analysis of our performance over the last 5 years, as at quarter 1, and it will show that we were above 90% from 2022 to 2024-25, and then from 25-26 to now, it has dropped to 83%. And that is mainly due to us in complying with the performance information regulatory environment and also aligning our baseline target setting. We've increased several of our targets, and we are in the process of adjusting in terms of operational achievement of those. So over time, we would see that increasing. If I move on to slide 9, which just indicates the regional performance over the period, and that shows that all the regions are performing in excess of 80%, at 89% and 86%. The only region that is below that is the Western Cape, which is at 79%. If I go, and I will go into the areas across. So going on to the targets that are not achieved, if we go to slide 11, and we start with program 1 on the percentage of officials found guilty of corrupt activities. There were 7 cases, and we achieved 7 out of those. And the one, we had an arbitration ruling that identified procedural irregularities in the disciplinary process. We have since instructed the state attorney to review the matter in the Labour Court because of irregular conduct on the part of the arbitrator. So that matter is taken or has been taken on review. In terms of the next indicator, which is the Correctional Services Amendment Bill, as of quarter 1, we were supposed to have finalized internal consultations with management. As at the 30th of June, We had not done that in terms of our ManCo considering the amendments. But the update as of now is that at the 27th of July, all the inputs were to the bill from legal services were finalized and reviewed by ManCo. So the next step is to go to stakeholder consultation. And then in Q4, we are aiming for the bill to be before cabinet. If we move to slide 13, on the indicators under JITO, which is the number of sites installed with smart technologies. This mainly talks to the implementation of AVR courts with the Department of Justice. The main hindering issue is that there was an unavailability of DOJ infrastructure for the data lines, and that has since been addressed by setting up VPN access with the courts. So the devices are in place and should be operational in the course of this quarter. If we move on to slide 14, which is the perennial challenge of the percentage of inmate overcrowding in correctional facilities. The target of 50% is now exceeded by 8, so we're sitting at 58%. Part of the interventions is the continuous and effective implementation of the overcrowding reduction strategy. So we have the regional overcrowding task teams and the national overcrowding task team, which deal with mainly distribution of inmates across areas where there's less overcrowding with those that are experiencing greater pressure. But also in addition to that, with the JCPS cluster, we have a overcrowding reduction strategy where with SAPS, Home Affairs, Department of Justice, NPA, Department of Health and Social Development, they are in the process of committing to specific actions that also will intend to address efficiencies in case management, amongst others, that will also have an impact on the remand detention population. If we go to slide 15, which is the percentage of offender profile reports that were decided upon by the Correctional Supervision and Parole Boards. The main challenge there was the vacancies in parole boards, and that was occasioned by the issues of the content of the contracts for the parole boards, which was resolved within the first quarter. So 2 adverts have since been placed in the media. The first one closed on the 20th of July, and that covered the Free State Northern Cape, LMN, and the Western Cape. The second advert is closing on the 31st of August, and that covers the Eastern Cape, Gauteng, and KZN. So in the advent of filling those CSPB posts, that workflow should improve going forward. If we go to slide 16, the percentage of offenders who have completed subjects in TVET college programs per academic year. On this indicator, the measurement has changed from participation historically, where we're measuring the participation of offenders. Now we're measuring the actual completion of courses by offenders. So from an output point of view, we have seen that the rates of completion have reduced, and that's why we are sitting at 58 of 129. So just in terms of corrective actions, we have to increase the assessment of educators in terms of upskilling technical educator skills to align them with the higher education curriculum. There are also other interventions on an ongoing basis in terms of having extra lessons around the areas of maths and all of the engineering sciences, and also ensuring the 80% mandatory attendance policy requirements for offenders in order to ensure that the numbers do improve. Chairperson and members, I think that at a high level is the overall areas of underperformance for the department, and then the other areas are just the achievement, which I will not go to in detail, and therefore I'll hand over to the CFO to take us through the financial performance slides. Thank you, Chair.
I think before CFO comes in, welcome Honorable Sokopo, and sincere apologies for starting without you. That was very quick, CDC Kateng. For a second there, I thought you were running a marathon. CFO, you can then proceed.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning to yourself, Chairperson, Honorable Chair, honorable members of the Portfolio Committee, Honorable Minister, National Commissioner, CDCs, and all the colleagues that are present and everyone that is in attendance today. I'll start my presentation, Chair, on slide 59. With slide 59, I'll cover actually 7 topics, which is the overall budget, the expenditure report, and the expenditure report per program, the report per economic classification, the overs and under relating to the expenditure, the infrastructure expenditure, the personal headcount, and the departmental revenue as my last topic in today's presentation. Moving to slide number 60. The slide number 60, Chair, talks to the available budget versus the actual budget to indicate that in Q1, we've spent 27% of our 30.9 billion budget, which we are left with 73%. And if you move to the next slide, which is slide number 61, if you look in terms of table 1, this is the year-to-date expenditure per program for Q1. And in terms of the economic classifications, you are under administration, we had an allocation of 6 billion. We have spent 1.6 of that particular amount, which we've got an available budget of 4.4 billion. Incarceration, we had an allocation of 18.4 billion. What was spent in Q1 in 4.9 billion. And we have available of 13 million. Rehabilitation, we've got 2.4 billion. We've spent 623 million. And then we've left with 1.7 billion. Care, 2.7 billion, we spent 797 million, and then we have left with 1.9 billion. Social integration, 1.2 billion, we've spent 354, we've left with 915 million. So in average, you've looked in terms of the spending patterns within the economic classification, you'll realize that care, it has spent actually 29% of their budget, which is the highest, and followed by social integration. And then you'll see in terms of administration and incarceration are sitting at 27%. If you move into table 2, Chair, which is expenditure per economic classification, compensation of employee allocation of 21 billion in terms of Q1, we've spent 5.2. We are currently left with 16 billion. And goods and services, 7.5 billion, we've spent 2.3. We've left with 5.2 billion to the remainder of the financial year. Interest on land, Chair, we had actually an expenditure of 784. And just to be able to indicate that, I know that Chair made an indication to be able to say that from the winning to be able to budget, we're still working with National Treasury about this particular aspect. And then the issue there is to be able to indicate in terms of how we're going to be able to allocate funds there because of mainly its interest and arbitration awards. So Treasury was indicating that we cannot budget for fruitless and wasteful expenditure. So they are trying to assist us in terms of how we can be able to deal with that particular aspect. Hence, you'll realize that even to date, there's no allocation in that particular interest on land, but we're still working with Treasury relating to that particular classification on interest on land. And then moving to provincial and local government, we have spent 9.5, and then our allocation budget is 9.5, and then we spend 2.6. So if you go to departmental agencies and accounts, it's 141 million, we've spent 43 million, we've left with 98. Just also to indicate that under public corporation and private, it was 1,000 was a misallocation, Chair, and then that has been corrected. It was the payment of the TV licenses, but that has been corrected, that allocation. You'll also realize, Chair, that under households, we had a budget of 1 billion and we spent 672 million. This is in the main, the leave gratuities that we have paid in April for the early retirement of the previous financial year, as that particular amount is not covered by the treasury allocation on the early retirement. So that's the amount that we cover it actually within our baseline. Hence, you'll see that from where there's a high expenditure there within this particular first quarter. And in terms of actually the balance, the available budget, there is 414 million. And one of our cost drivers, which is building an infrastructure, out of the year-to-date budget of 241 million, we've spent 45 million and we left with 196 million. And machinery and equipment, 236, we've spent 36 million, we've left 199. Biological asset, 4 million, we spent 662. So in terms of software and intangible asset payments on financial assets, we did not have actually any expenditure within the current quarter. Moving quickly to slide number 62. Slide number 62, Chair, I'm going to deal with the issues relating to the expenditure per program. I'll quickly run through that. In terms of the quarter, administration projected 1.8 billion and the actual expenditure, it was 1.6 billion, which represent an underspending of 11%, meaning that you spend 89%. But if you go to the 4 programs, which is incarceration that projected 4.6 billion, they've spent 5 billion over the projected amount, then we had actually an over with actually 9% of the projected amount within the quarter. Rehabilitation, the same. They projected 571 million and they spent 624, meaning that from there we've actually have an over expenditure of 9%. Care, the same 677 million that was projected. We spent 798 and which an over expenditure of 18%, which is the highest. And you've got social integration, 318 million of the projection, and we spent 354 million, and then which is 12% of the over expenditure. And then those are the two in terms of where you'll see from where that they're high. And then I'll go to the cost drivers in the next slides. Slide number 63. Chair, you go to, we've spent in terms of the COE, compensation of employees, 5.3 billion against the projected of 5.2 billion, which meaning that from them we spend actually less by 2% on our projections. Goods and services, 2.3 billion against the projected expenditure of 1.8. So there's overspending of 27%. Transfer and subsidies, 718 million against projected expenditure of 626, which we've overspent our projection with 15%. That's where actually we pay also jigs, municipalities, license for vehicles and so forth. Capital expenditure, 82 million against the projected of 135 million. So we had an underspending of 39%, specifically in terms of the projected amount. Moving to slide number 64. Slide number 64, Chair, just does the overs and unders to indicate that from in terms of quarter one, when we're doing our calculations in terms of projections, we were projecting an over expenditure of 749 million. Chair, if you might recall, actually in terms of our previous financial year projections during the same quarter, we're sitting at 1.2 billion. So currently in the next financial, in the same quarter, we're sitting with an projected over expenditure of 749 million, which is something that as the department we are working on in terms of preventing that to be able to happen at the end of the financial year. I'm not going to go through each and every under and over expenditure, but just to be able to indicate that from the, our expenditure in terms of cost drivers is still food and food for inmates and also properties. So just to move to the next slide, which is slide number 65. Slide number 65, Chair, don't want to repeat myself, but also to be able to indicate, to say the cost drivers of the goods and services. Specifically, if you look in terms of the previous slides, when I was indicating that from there, we have an overspending of 27% under goods and services. It was informed by the following categories in slide number 65, which is food and food, and then fleet services, and also outsourced services and property payments. Transfers and subsidies have indicated, Chair, to say that from the voluntary exit program, it has cost the department for that particular 600 million that we have paid from the 1 billion, which is actually the leave gratuities. So moving to slide number 66. Slide number 66 talks to the infrastructure budget to indicate that from the out of the 1.3 billion, 331 million has already been spent, and then the projected annual expenditure of 1.3 will result into overspending of 35 million, which is something that we have to work on as the department to be able to deal with those particular aspects. What we have done as the department internally, we have already do the actual analysis to see in terms of where can we be able to reduce costing to be able to fund our infrastructure project. Quickly moving to slide number 67. Chair, slide number 67 deals with personal headcount to indicate that in terms of our E&E, published E&E, reported to be 37 against permanent personnel field post of 34,000, resulting to a variance of 6.6 against the funded HRPP tool, and the establishment on personnel is sitting at 42,495 posts against the 34,727 field posts, resulting to a variance of 7.768 posts. The vacancy rate reported in terms of the HRPP tool is sitting at 7% against the vacancy rate on personnel, which is sitting at 18.2 process. And just to also to indicate that the process of the personnel cleanup is underway, and what we have done differently this particular financial year, we had a meeting with National Treasury about this issue of the personnel cleanup, and then there was an intervention from their side to be able to assist the department to be able to deal and address this particular aspect, and the process is still underway between HR and National Treasury. Moving to the next slide, which is slide number 68, which talks about the departmental receipt. In terms of our estimated revenue collection of 60 million, we've under collected by 8 million, which we collected 52 million, and our projection for the financial year for revenue collection receipt is 246 million. So we will have to be able to work to ensure that from our revenue collection is in line with our estimation of 246 million by the end of the quarter number 4. Thank you, Chair. Let me just end there. Thank you.